Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Carlson, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator here at Advisicon, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Here at Advisicon, we are a group of authors, teachers, consultants, and technologists offering training from the Microsoft technologies such as Project, Office 365, Power BI, Visio, and SharePoint, as well as project management and methodology. With attending any of our training sessions, we offer PDUs as we are a registered education provider with the Project Management Institute. And at the close of today's session, I will give some instructions on how you can claim your PDUs and how to contact us for any questions you may have. Now, before we get started, I want to go over a few things so you know how to participate in today's event. If you review the control panel, that should be on the top right of your screen. The audience is muted during this session, so in order to ask questions, you will need to submit them in the questions window of the control panel. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded to the Advisicon YouTube channel for those who could not attend today's session live. And please note that any questions or comments submitted will not display in the recording, nor will any of your personal information be shared. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's instructor, Advisicon's president, Tim Runcie. And so I'll hand this over to him and we can get started.
Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Happy week this is in our new year. I'm very excited to continue our conversation a little bit about what we have going on around the project stack and the evolution of some of the new innovative technologies that we have available. As you know, love to teach, love to speak, love to really roll up our sleeves and help you optimize what you're doing. So today's agenda is going to be part of a continuing series that's going to roll out between now and the end of June or July because of some of the fast-paced engaged features, capabilities, tools that are going to be planned. And so I'll talk about some of that today, but definitely we'll be zeroing in on something called Roadmap. And some of you may have seen a little bit of an inkling of this, but I'm excited for us to be able to dig in a bit deeper and cover some of that detail. So we're definitely going to talk about the direction, the digital transformation that Microsoft's going through, and that we're talking about in near term. This isn't something that's a 2-year roadmap. We're talking about capabilities that are turned on, enabled, and coming, as well as some of the changes that you're going to see over the next few months. So we'll also talk about the elements around Agile. I think it's important for us to see that. And then what I'm really excited about is not just to drill in and go through Roadmap and show some of the wider capabilities that literally are turning on like week after week, but how you could get engaged and work directly with the engineering teams at Microsoft. And where before it used to be like MVPs and gold partners or people on the advisory council, these were the only channels that typically Microsoft would be listening to, or they might only talk to really big customers. So now they have something called user voice, which if you haven't seen it for other programs that are out there, I'm going to show you how to take advantage of that. And you're going to see things about today, the feature of Roadmap, and people starting to comment. So we want you to register, vote, poke, prod, put suggestions out there, because a lot of this is going on behind the scenes, but it's really you, the customer, people in the project management world that will best benefit from really having direct contact with engineering. So with that in mind, let's talk about the technology roadmap, which is different than the feature roadmap that comes with, say, Microsoft Project. So if we think in terms of the program and process that's going on, what we call continuous innovation, so around project, program, and portfolio management. Since 2010, there has been a significant series of steps, and we're going to see an update of this probably coming up next month, where we're actually going to start dropping some of the things that are going to see between now and the next 6 months. But going from Power BI integration to resource management to multiple timelines and views with Agile and Kanban boards, there's a significant component in including some of the delays caused by GDPR and security compliance. Microsoft has been working very hard to make sure any new features, any new capabilities are really locked down so that they don't get out, somebody can't hack it, can't log in and see it. But also, you are who you are, and you get to see what you get to see based upon your security persona. And that's important to be able to really adhere to that, especially as we're talking about Azure DevOps, going into Planner, reading things from Jira, or maybe pulling things from different project schedules, or even going to different project tenants, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today as well. So certainly as we're thinking about these changes that are happening, this innovation stream, if we'll call it, really involves the integration of Power Apps and Flow and things that you'll find in Office 365 that are really trying to help consolidate, and simplify the end user experience. And this is important because as we think in terms of innovation and capabilities, it's not just a short sprint to crank out a couple new features, but really to set a solid foundation to build beyond. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about, things that we've seen to what's going on behind the scenes. So if you've been using maybe the latest version of Project, or we call it Click to Run, or Project 2016, you'll notice that if you've been in Office 365, you've got this product called Planner. You may have seen Microsoft To Do. If you're using Teams, you notice that you can embed Planner to Project to Teams. And then you'll find things suddenly called Microsoft Shift. What in the world is that? Well, we're going to be doing a webinar talking about that feature, because if we think in terms of the overall technology roadmap around supporting our community of practice, it's important to be able to use the right tool for the job. Now, thinking about this, in this innovation stream, Microsoft is working diligently behind the scenes to make sure that they have a standardized platform. So you're going to hear the term modern project. You're going to hear things called the new home site. In fact, today you're going to see the new homepage if you haven't seen it. And we'll talk about common platform to work from. And the reason this is important as we deal with what's called modern work management is that we have these power apps, Power BI, we have this automation component that we're able to use, and then Microsoft has significant products out there, whether it's CRM or Dynamics or other tools that say, hey, listen, we actually have the ability to bring Project a better together story. In a sense, in the inverse of that would be also financial systems or other planning tools can now start taking advantage of the benefits that the project schedule engine has. So you're going to hear things over the next few months talking about project service automation. We'll talk about the ability of the interconnection between Dynamics, and I'll bring up a little slide here so you can see, talking about really going to Outlook, if you will, and progressing your tasks. So being able to say, hey, look, I don't have to hop to a mobile app somewhere else to try and timesheet. I've got it right here in Outlook. I can kind of keep track of that. And that data, that common data platform, common data service that we're working with allows the information to appear in the right places depending on what tools you're using. So again, touch the data once, right? One version of the truth. So with that, let's lead a little bit deeper into roadmap. And I think it's important to understand both the future state, what we call roadmap of Microsoft Project, as well as the Office 365 components that are going to be kind of worked together. So the feature roadmap, not just the roadmap that you'll find in Office 365 that talks about all of Word and Excel and PowerPoint and all the feature changes that might be happening in Azure, but the feature product called Roadmap, which comes with a license of Microsoft projects. When you go and buy a click-to-run version or an Office 365 Project Professional version of Project, you actually have this feature. Don't have to do anything different. So in terms of going there, the intent is that we can look at tactical schedules, we can look at resources assigned to that work, but inherently there's this ability to say, I need a broader view, program management or portfolio view, maybe across different systems. And that's important because Microsoft is leveraging a product called Flow, which if you haven't used Flow, it actually helps you move or automate things to say, look, I can push, pull, and share data into a visualization, and I can blend the technology of whether it's Azure or I'm dealing with an Agile or Waterfall, or maybe you're in Prince 2, or perhaps you're doing what we call Wagile or Scrummerfall, or you're sprinting down the waterfall. But whatever the products that are helping you work, we want to bring that into a view so that a programmer or portfolio manager has the ability to communicate and manage some of the details that might be coming from different places. So less talking, more kissing. Let's jump right into this and take a quick peek at a couple elements I think that are going to be helpful for us. Number one, how do you get it? How do you turn it on? So in December, this began to come in at a fast or a feverish pace where Microsoft was rolling out the roadmap feature to different tenants. So if your tenant doesn't have it, you'll see a screen that says when you go to admin that it's not available. However, there are some of us who've been around for a while who've been using the online environment, and we may already get it. Unfortunately, the back end of our structure or project is going to have to move to the modern project. And so there's a little bit of what we call a migration to what's called CDS, Common Data Service, CDS 2.0. Very straightforward. In fact, let me bring up a couple websites just so you can see what I'm talking about here. And if you ever need to reach out and ask for the URLs, I'm happy to make those available. But if you look here, you can actually see some components and blog postings by the engineering team about how do you turn it on, what are some things that you want to consider in doing so, and making those available. In fact, whether you turn it on or off, they have a great description here going through the docs at Microsoft.com, as well as you'll look at Chris and Howard here, who have kind of some fun videos, which I don't know why they're wearing shades, but we know the future is bright, but they've been getting a lot of snow recently, so perhaps we'll see earmuffs and mittens on next time. But they're giving you kind of a how to make this work. Very short, very straightforward. So with that in mind, let me just kind of demonstrate. If you have an Office 365 administrator, you can go right into your landing page and you can click on the Admin Center. Now, some people do it from the waffle. I'm kind of an old school. I usually go up to my waffle here. That's the little grid, and I click on Admin. And what you'll do here is you're going to come directly in and say, hey, look, if I need to enable this feature, this is where I would go to enable features across the Office 365 environment. And you'll need to do this if you want to start using the roadmap feature. So while my screen is kind of whirring and clicking and chugging here it goes. You'll go down over to where it says Settings. So if I click on Settings, you'll get a nice little drop down. And there's a lot of things in here, but most of the time, think of it like an add-in. The nice thing about Office 365 and the project management tools, a lot of these you just can turn them on. So if you haven't seen Planner, things like that, like, oh, it's free, we just need to turn this on in our environment. Now, as this grows and grows, instead of just scrolling through the list to find something about project, you could actually come up here and just type in PROJ, and it's going to zip through the list and help you find specifically something that's a little bit named the same thing. So here's Project Online. Let me click on that for you. And while we're waiting here, you're going to see an option here that will either say it's not available for your tenant, or you may need to upgrade, and that'll tell you what that is. And you'll simply click on this button and turn this on. Now, I'm not going to turn mine off because I don't want to delete my data, but this is really all you have to do is come in here, click the button, and then hit save. And in your latest or newest environments, this feature is going to be available. So we're going to take a look at that in a little bit more detail. Let me just close this since I don't want to make any changes. And let's talk about roadmap in its pictorial sense here. So let's take a picture here. So this is a roadmap, and what's great about this is let's talk about how we actually want to find or see this. So in project, as we're working, if I close out of a project schedule here, which I'm in Project Online, and I run back here, I'm just going to go right to my main landing page, and we're going to first see kind of the new component, what's called the project home page here. So instead of us having to drill to all the projects, looking at all the details, we can actually jump right into a landing site that makes this available for us to work with. So again, that evolution of making sure that we've got in the Admin Center, we've got some great features and capabilities here. You're going to see an option that says, hey, Tim, these are some of the ones of the last projects you've been working with. Here's some recent ones, what was created by me, what was shared. And you'll see at the top here, it says Create New. Now, when you click on Create New, you're going to get a drop-down option here that says, hey, we're kicking off a project. Or once you turn on the roadmap feature, you're going to see this Create Roadmap. And the idea of creating a roadmap is that we're going to stand up an environment that's going to give us some visibility to everything that we want to kind of bring in. Could be projects, could be sections of projects, could be just, instead of drilling into all the details from a project center, we're able to centralize that in a program or a portfolio view. And we can actually add some of our own details like key dates to tell that story a little bit differently. Now, before I go in here, everyone gets kind of excited about this. What I want to do is I want to talk about something called user voice. And user voice, in fact, let me just bring up the desktop tool. If you haven't seen this in Word and Excel and PowerPoint, is that you'll start seeing the option to have a conversation, or you'll see a little smiley face, which will allow you to click on it. But if you click on that File tab, just in either Project Desktop, you'll see an option here called Feedback. And you can send a smile, you can send a frown, you can even send a suggestion. And it has an environment here. Let me just kind of zoom this for you guys. It says, hey, look, if it's not just a frown or a smile, I want to talk about what's happening here. You could go into something called user voice. This and let me say this is very important, is what you're going to want to do going forward if you really want to escalate features and capabilities. What's interesting is as a project MVP, I have a lot of backdoor conversations. I work with the engineering team. In fact, I'll be spending a week there really looking at new features, talking about what we need to do, kind of helping prioritize on that, arm wrestling, kind of poking them. And they poke back saying, well, we don't do this because here. But the whole idea is that you actually have a voice. And if you want to get into sending a suggestion, here it comes. It'll open up a website for you. You can go into that user voice. Now, let's say you don't have Microsoft Project Desktop and you're going to File and Options to kick off to hit this landing page. Well, guess what? You don't need it to go to user voice. You can actually go in directly to the website and go here to the project page. So it just says microsoftproject.uservoice.com, and you can come right in here and you can put in information or ideas or suggestions. In fact, what the idea is you can vote on what's hot. Here's some of the hot described items. Display windows and separate screens. Wouldn't it be nice to have like Excel and Microsoft Project where you could take different schedules, pull them off into two different windows? And as we go through here, you'll see deeper integration with Planner. We get into some technical elements here, but if I want to really say, hey, what are the top categories or what are people posting, I can come in and say, how do I see this? And if you scroll through this list, you can actually go and vote, and they literally are listening to the end users. In fact, I won't say the names of the engineers because they'll probably shoot me, but they are listening. They will respond. Different versions, cloning, and then if we get into things you're going to see for a search component is that we'll actually get into the ability to have a better conversation with something called roadmap. And this is a great place to come in and have some of those conversations where you can put it in here. So if you haven't found this yet, this is where you're going to be able to really influence some of the conversational pieces around that. So whether you drive it from the project desktop, or you come right out here and you just go right in and say, hey, look, I want to talk about what I want to see, what's available. The idea is that you have that conversation. So don't forget you've got that visibility and availability now to also help promote these up to the engineering teams. Okay, with that in mind, let me return back to our environment and let's talk about roadmap. So here's a roadmap. And the idea is that you can create a new roadmap. In fact, if I go back to my project homepage here, and I really take my landing site and say, hey, let's create a new roadmap, I'll simply click on Create a New Roadmap. You'll see a nice little screen here. Thank goodness it isn't the spinning wheel. We've seen that for the last 20 years. But the idea is it says, hey, look, let me create a roadmap here. I can come up and give it a name. We'll just go ahead and call this Demo Web Roadmap. If I can type. Now, what's important here as you're going in and putting in your information is that you need to make sure you have an owner. And this is going to be important because I've already started getting calls and people asking questions. Hey, I'm adding features or rows or I'm connecting different systems, but it won't let me connect. And here's what you want to do. If you go to add a row, it says, well, what do you want to add? Is it a detail here? Is it a key date? What do you want to put in here? And people will come in and say, well, I want to put in my forecasting for FY19 or FY20. And then they'll try and get to go somewhere and it says, well, are you going to Project Online or to an Azure board? In fact, you're going to see this list growing with the capabilities. But what they miss is, hey, listen, don't forget to say who is the owner of this. And this is important because if you're letting somebody who just spins up, has a Microsoft project license, hey, I'm a project manager, and I want to go and see some other tenant, or I want to log into the development environment and see what's going on here. Maybe I don't have permissions. You need to put this in here. So, for example, if I have a team environment, I spin up a planner board, maybe you don't have access to that. They have to make sure that from a security perspective that they know who it is and what's getting put in here. So let me just start typing. Tim loads a list. It looks into my Active Directory environment, recognizes me. So I'll select it. And now what I can do is click on Creating a Project. So in this case, if I click on Project Online, I can go and select, now this is important here, look up here, it says, what is the URL that you're going to? I can look for projects in multiple tenants. Now think about that for a moment. That means that, let's say I have an engineering team that has kind of their own project PWA environment, doing their own stuff over here, and then I might have the PMO who's managing capital projects, and they have their separate instance. In a roadmap, I can look to the different sites and pull in information from different locations. In this case, if you take a look here, this is my demo environment, and you can see some of us in here that will build and demo and put projects in place. And then I might have another instance, which I'm looking at specifically that might be around a production environment, or maybe I'm looking at some nonprofit projects that we're doing a lot of work to support. And so these have different URLs, and we're able to go back and forth and bring those into our environment. It just needs to know what that is and where I'm looking for it. Now, in this environment, if I want to add something, specifically looking at a particular project, so if I'm looking at just my regular sites here, I may want to say, hey, we did a demo with the marriage team in terms of communication. And so if I start typing in here, it'll start recognizing what are the projects that actually have the words in there. So I don't have to scroll through a very long list. I'm hoping to see some other things that will actually not make you have to type quite as much, but if you click here, it's going to run out there and it says, I know who you are, I know what environment you actually have permission to connect to, and maybe even in that environment you don't get to see everything, but we know who you are, so we're going to apply that security level to your visibility. And then here, all I have to do is click on connect, and then what I'm able to do is I'm able to add any of the details that I'm allowed to see in that environment. So for example, if I come in here and I just say, hey, listen, I want to look for project management activities, and I just start typing through the list, it says, oh, there's project management. I can select it, and I can continue to add more. So perhaps I may want to put in something that says, what are we doing around technology? I thought there was something in technology. Optimization and support here. And so I'm creating a list. I've got a bunch of dates here, and I can click on add. Now when I add these, it's going to grab them, drop them into my environment. And I won't make this a big typing class, but you can see there's a lot of optimization support that's going on. We've got an international picture, and I can continue to add some of these as well. In fact, in a minute I'm going to talk about Azure DevOps, because I know a lot of you have not seen this yet. But if I want to zoom in and zoom out, I can kind of take a look at bringing in project or related information and making them visible and available. Now let's kind of fast forward a little bit here. Let's jump over to my other planner board. And I've got my roadmap here, and I've got these boards that I've been kind of dropping in. Hey, here's some key dates here. FY18 year-end review. I've got FY19 planning. Massive March Madness is coming, and of course my birthday, huge day here at the company, so wonder what we're going to do. But maybe I want to add a new key date. So let me put in here and say, hey, look, the financial team has to go and say year-end tax planning, right? We've got a massive tax thing. We've got the finance department trying to close out old projects, bring them in here, and we're going to push that right up to April. So let me bump that down to, or out in the future, we'll just say not the 15th, we'll just say the 8th. And the status, I can go and pick on a key date, whether it's done, high risk, on track. I'll just say this is a track, add key date, and you can see I can pull these in here. So as I go and I'm looking at different projects, so again, if I click on any one of these, I can say, hey, I'm looking at an invoicing project. I'm looking at a project schedule for key dates with the biothermal for helmets. Again, I'm connected. It knows who I am, who owns this. But the element that most people haven't seen is the ability to add something from Azure DevOps, right? So if I click on saying adding a row, it wants to know this. Maybe I say this is our development team forecast. And when I come in here, it says, well, what do you want to connect to? So first, I'm going to remind them it's me. Please let me go and see what I'm supposed to see. And then second, when I click on this drop-down arrow, which at some point you'll see Planner, you'll see other things, perhaps if you're going to have Jira or other tools available, we want to be able to go and find other work management, task management, and project and portfolio management environments here. So I'm going to click on what's called an Azure board. And so it's looking out and says, hey, by the way, we recognize you've got a Visual Studio environment, and perhaps I want to go through here and select a project. So maybe I pull in my invoicing software project that we're building a new custom interface for professional services firms to be able to use project, but yet have it feed their accounting environment so that they can forecast and plan and invoice correctly. And when I'm ready, I can click on Connect. It's going to run out to this Azure environment and say, hey, listen, from a development perspective, whether it's local or here, I've got this Azure board that we can work with. So what is it that we want to see? And in a minute, I'm just going to just hop over there so you can see what we're looking at. But maybe I'm talking about PO notifications. I really, oops, if I can spell right, how about, there we go, note, there it is. PO notifications. I've got this board of activities. So I'm going to leave it sitting right here, and I'm going to just click on our development environment here. And if you look at this, is that in Azure DevOps, really some of you may have remembered some Team Foundation server, the old TFS, Team Foundation server environment. Well, when I come in here, I can create boards of activities. So I can create projects, and I can create work. And the idea is if I add a new work item, I'll kind of zoom this for you, is that perhaps maybe Microsoft Project is forecasting out the change management, the training, but when I'm really working with creating either epics or features or issues or requirements or tasks or test cases or user stories, is that these typically get assigned to technical resources. So they might take a single deliverable that might be saying, hey, we're going to be building this new reporting interface, and that might get broken out to 30 different tasks. We'll have bugs that spin up, but the idea is that I can connect to any one of these and I can see them. So as I look in this environment, this says PO creation interface. So if I go back over to my roadmap here, whoops, that's the one I just built. Here we go. I'm trying to type PO notifications. Let's add something else here. And yeah, we'll drop one in. Let's just say interface. And it's going to spin through there. Maybe I don't know how I'm spelling it. It says, oh, by the way, we've got a couple things. We've got an invoice creation interface, pretty big element here. And so what I'm able to do is connect to an external system that's a development environment. I'm not trying to copy and paste it, drop it into project and kind of model it. I can actually see the information and I can add these together. So inherently, I've got this environment where I can zoom in, I can zoom out, maybe not a week at a glance, maybe I want to look at a month or a day, but I've got visibility. I can also add my own key dates, and at any given time, you can click on what are called the details, which will give you this little flyout window over here. When you select a row, you can actually see it. You can also invite people to this. So perhaps I'm building a bigger roadmap, and what I really would like to do is add a few additional members to be able to see this. So just like you do in Planner and other of the Office 365 tools, you've got the ability to kind of invite them to your team, invite them to your Planner board. Oh, we're inviting them to our roadmap. And we can bring them in. We can filter by owner. If I had Ken or if I had Kevin or some of our staff owning different pieces, I can actually have them forecast here. So part of the value of using the roadmap is that instead of making people grind through all the details in a project schedules, I can pick and choose key milestones, key dates, key summary tasks. I can split across multiple tenants. I mean, I love our timeline views here, but what if I want to look across multiple tenants or multiple environments? Now what I'm doing is letting the teams work in the tools that they're most comfortable with. For essential developers aren't really wanting to jump into Microsoft Project, but yet they're able to manage working in that Azure environment where they have work items or they have backlogs or they have sprints that are scheduled. We can actually say what's being available, what's getting done, and I can actually see that in a roadmap. So again, as we set up our environment, you've got a great place to connect to external data, and that is the beginning of this tool. It's brand spanking new. We're talking just a few months out there for play. You have the opportunity to provide user story and feedback for that. But again, if we think about the big picture from a portfolio perspective or a program, is that if you've got a license or project, turn this on, run it out there, invite people to see it, and they can manage from that. Okay, so let's talk past the how to get it turned on. Let's talk a little bit more about the tool sets. What's important is remember that Microsoft is continuing to innovate. Not only is the back end beginning to integrate with other tools that we're going to see, and especially around resource management or CRM, customer relationship management, you're going to see a tighter coupling where workflow, like for example, Microsoft Flow, can move information between environments. Before, you might have to run a query, drop the data into SharePoint, synchronize it to project, push and pull, run it over there, and you went through 15 hops just to get something to show up on a mobile device. Now, whether you're just looking at a web environment or you're synchronizing your data, you have some back-end tools that Office 365 has brought in to help make that work. Microsoft's investing significantly in Agile. We will see more and more continue to roll out as the connection of where your technical teams work in, for example, Azure DevOps are now being made available through resource management, program, and project management, kind of coupling those tighter together. And again, web-driven interface. Get in, get out, get back to work. You don't have to be on the Microsoft stack to use Chrome or use Safari or Firefox. Okay, maybe Firefox is a little bit dated for some of us, but you find your browser, right? Get to a browser and use it. Most people are using different versions, whether it's Edge, Internet Explorer, or you're certainly jumped right on the bandwagon. You're a Chrome person, but the idea is that you can view, quickly find that information, and based upon who you are, the security permission model stays intact if you're going from one tenant to bring data into another tenant, or to use the roadmap tool to kind of see across multiple places. So where are you going to see this? You're going to see it in the Office 365, the online experience first. That's really the idea, is that that's where it's set up and designed to go. And it's important for you, if you're looking for this, again, I would say continue to pass the word, come to the webinars. We're going to continue to show a little bit more as we're approved to show that about what's happening in terms of the visualization of project. But I wanted to spend some time with you today around the roadmap feature, which again is designed to span outside of project, but yet bring project information into one central portal. It's really quick, it's really simple, easy to add key dates, easy to connect things if you have permission to it. You may just need to turn it on if that's not available in your environment, or if you've got an older environment, make sure you upgrade it. There's a process around that. So if you have questions around this, I encourage you to reach out to myself or any one of our team to communicate that. And from a questions perspective, I know as this is going to go on, a lot of people are going to get in there and start playing around with it. So there are a lot of changes coming, including even Office's logos and icons are all getting remorphed and changed to prepare for some of the big pushes. But again, as I mentioned, in the next 6 months, you will see a tremendous amount of communication coming out. Certification exams are going to be changing. You're going to see some of the training components that are going to be made available through the LinkedIn portal. So again, the idea is to get that word out. But if you're in the middle of just day-to-day project to tactical to strategic planning, is that with a single license of project, you're still through Office 365 to get that better together story using some of the more tools that come with it. Okay. Well, I've had fun. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was helpful. And again, in terms of getting started, Amanda, let me hand it back to you because I know that people are interested in their PDUs. And certainly, as always, if you need help in any other area, whether it's automation, development, training, been doing this for 25 years, we love it. We'll continue to do it, and we hope to continue to bring this out. So if you're watching this on YouTube, definitely like it, even if it's a recording after the fact. But Amanda, I'll let you take it away. And again, if you have questions, reach out to me anytime. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. We welcome your questions and feedback. And for more information, you can email us at contact@advisicon.com. Once you exit today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and you will need to complete and submit the survey in order to receive your PDUs. From there, you will receive a follow-up email within 2 business days with your PDU information. If you're watching this recording on YouTube or another social media platform, please be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads. And on behalf of Advisicon, Tim, and myself, thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you participate in our future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks now.